Well, good afternoon. This is Hound Dog Steve wishing you a very pleasant afternoon. Now, I've had many requests to do a video of how I built this little greenhouse, and so I'm just going to walk around with the camera, and now that it's all finished off, now I'm going to interspace with some of the building of this, because I have other videos. I'll cut that out and splice it in just to give you an idea how certain components were built and what this looked like before I even started. And so let's take a little walk around, and we'll have a close-up of some of the finer points of the construction of this greenhouse. Okay, so I'll just first say that the overall footprint is 10 by 20. There is a 3-foot walkway down the center, and the beds are 3.5 foot wide on either side. That makes for a nice wide working area, and trust me, when you're working in a greenhouse you need to have plenty of room. I can get a small wheelbarrow in here if I need to, and that is very important. Okay, so let's take a quick look around. So as you can see in the beginning, these were just 2 raised beds side by side. They were made out of spruce, which was a disaster, and I replaced them with hemlock. Hemlock is an incredibly tough wood, and what I did when I finished this off, I just painted it with engine oil. That's right, 10W30. Does a beautiful job, and it protects the wood. So each section was made separately. This is made up with 2 by 8 by 10 hemlock boards, and you can see they're square cut, and so you get a nice join down here on the side. Believe it or not, on the outside I was getting wind was blowing through these gaps and drying out the soil.
May you never lay your head down without a hand to hold. May you never make your bed out in the cold. Just like I'm a greeting some brother of mine, you know that I...
Well, good afternoon. This is Hound Dog Steve coming to you on Monday the 4th of September. Still the Labor Day long weekend, and of course it's supposed to celebrate Labour. And of course I've been celebrating Labour by labouring on my hugelkultur raised beds. So anyways, I'm going to take the camera off the stand, and we're going to take a little look around, and we'll see how we're coming along. So here's my little back garden workshop there to cut all my pieces of wood. I'm using hemlock, I think I've mentioned before, and the hemlock I'm hoping is going to be a lot more sturdy and resistant to the spruce. Okay, so this is the first bed made. Here are the supports for the arches on this side. Okay, so I have filled in with some more wood from over my pile over there, and I've been very careful this time to layer with soil in between, and now I'm just putting in some bark and some of those chips to fill up spaces, and also this is part of your raised bed, and then I've got some branches over there that I'm going to lay down as well on top of that. The hay will go on top of that, and then the rest of the soil down there will be put on top of that. Now I decided to put a centerboard in here just so that I can separate different things when I'm planting, or have an area where I can put only one thing in. and also to strengthen the center, because I see that even with the hemlock, I don't know if you can see, this is perfectly straight, and you see the other one is just bowed out a little bit. That is just the pressure of the soil. So I'm going to do the same on the other side, because these boards have to be strong enough to hold in place the plastic hoops, or the PVC hoops, when I put them in with their fasteners. They'll be held in place along the top there, so you know, this is really not a weight bearing. There's not a lot of pressure downward, you know, with the plastic is not heavy, so there shouldn't be too much of an issue. And I've actually had a friend, thankfully, donate some UV resistant plastic. He had a garden centre himself, retired, and anyway, all that plastic went into the barn. He said I can help myself. So certainly my first plastic cover is going to be taken care of by a generous donation. That's about 200 bucks. I priced him out to cover my little spot here. 200 bucks. Okay, so now you can see how I've lined the inside of one of the sides. I sort of pre-built it so that I can just set it down in place and join it to the two ends. Now, of course, this is not a precise science, as you can see. It was a little difficult getting around that corner, but anyway, basically the idea is that because this is a material, that it will have some wicking ability, and that it will keep the moisture, the moisture in the soil from sitting directly against the wood, and hopefully slow down the rotting process. So here is one end. This is the remnants of the hugelkultur, the burying of wood underneath, and you can see how it's rotted away quite nicely, and it's soaked up all the moisture. And again, this is what the mustard looks like when it's full grown and coming into flower. And you watch that will go crazy with pollinators too when that comes in. And so here is the middle board, so it's ready to be joined up on both sides. Now this had to be a lot more sturdy than it was, and it's been a bit of a chore, but I'm glad that I'm doing this, because you know, this is going to be a greenhouse, and I want it to be sturdy, and I want it to last a good long time. So anyway, it really is starting to take shape, and my next little move will be to actually join those three sides together, cut my next three boards, line them, and then we will have another box built. And the same with this. And as you can see, we're coming along. Because this is a long weekend and there won't be much going on tomorrow, I will be finishing off these hoops. And if I get a moment, I may go and pick up the plastic, although I won't be putting any plastic on this year. And I think I'm going to oil the outside of these boards to try and preserve them a little bit from the weather. But yes, I'm very pleased. I'm very pleased with the way this is coming along. This will make a very nice greenhouse. Well, good afternoon. This is Hound Dog Steve coming to you on the 30th of March, which is coming up. It's Good Friday, and so it's a long weekend. I haven't got the day off, and we're going to be working on the greenhouse. And but before I do that, we're going to take you on a little tour of the garden, and we'll just see what it's looking like for a springtime. And I might add, at this point, it has been pretty chilly so far. The frost is just starting to come out of the ground, and we should be seeing some buds probably in the next 3 or 4 weeks on the trees, that is. Okay, so let's take a look at this greenhouse and we'll see what we've done so far. So as you can see, I got the rest of the supports on. This is just PVC tubing, and I put this I guess it's 2x1 strapping on here just to give it a little bit of sturdiness along these sides. But it really is starting to take shape. You can see what it's going to look like, of course. Now, and as you can see, the greenhouse is just about done. I got the ends on and painted, and all I have to do is now pull the plastic over the top. But I'm quite pleased with this. It's a nice sturdy construction, and I think it'll bear the weight, well, not the weight, but the pressure of the wind blowing against the plastic. I guess my biggest concern would be hail or something like that. Anyway, she's ready to go. That's the final thing, as I say, putting the plastic on. So here I have been preserving the exterior of the greenhouse, and what I've been using is engine oil. This is an incredible preserver. It's not going anywhere near the food that's being planted, and just on the exterior, and that will help it last a little bit longer than it might otherwise do. I finally got the awning over the greenhouse, and it's actually looking a little bit like a greenhouse. Look at that. I'm pretty pleased with that. We've just got a few little finishing details on the ends here, and I'm going to put a screen door in here. It'll be okay for the summertime, but in the winter time or the fall we're going to need that. And there is actually quite a temperature difference when you walk in here in the sun. It's quite intense under here. So I just had some little finishing off details. This bit right here, this cross piece to stop any sagging, because there's now quite a bit of weight on the top of these supports. And I've just tied it down with rope. Put some screw eyes in there, and I just used a staple gun to staple the plastic to the wood. So I'm looking forward to great things. Now these cross supports, again you can see how I built them there with a 2x4 to stop bowing in the center, and then 2 beams right the way along the center to support the PVC hoops. Now what I did here, these go right the way down, and you can see where I've attached them with the screws right the way down to the bottom, so that this will not move around. It's nice and sturdy. Now I put these cross pieces in. These are not structural. These were just to have my vines growing on. And so as you can imagine, one end went on, came down. The second bed shares the center. The centerpiece is the end for both raised beds. The PVC plastic is 1.5 inch drain, and it is quite sturdy. It's not the most expensive, which is really sturdy, but it's not the weakest either. It's a sort of mid-range, and I think it cost me about $100 for 125 feet, and it took 1.5 coils to do that. But again, you can see you can use mathematics. Pi d gives you your circumference, and you can measure out these supports. And of course, as you can imagine, you know, the plastic is not very heavy, so you don't need an awful lot of strength in there. And of course, because it's being supported by this top bar, it supports quite a lot of snow. It's unbelievable, actually. Now, what is important, these are the two kinds of fasteners that I used, and you can see this has a nut on the end, and this has a flat end. Now they both have incredible positive drive bits that fit in there, and so that does not jump out. It's a very, very strong screw, and you can see it's quite a bit thicker than a deck screw. Both of them are. And what I found was I used deck screws originally on the original raised beds, but they just weren't strong enough. And in the wintertime, the pressure of the ice and the expansion and contraction as the boards got wet and dry proved too much, and they just burst open. Now this greenhouse, I don't know if you can see up there, 2016 I built this, so we're now going into our 4th season. Now you may be wondering what this wood is across here. Well, the lower one is just basically to hold all of the tubing in place, so it's nice and evenly spaced. But the other one is the top piece of plastic. Now the plastic on the bottom, you can just see there where it doesn't look like it's very well attached. There's just a couple of staples holding that in, but that whole strip comes out in the summertime, because as I say, heat is your big issue in here. You need a fan, no doubt about it, and the temperature outside is 10 degrees, and we are at 22 degrees in here, and I can tell you from standing here it is pretty warm. Now the ends are a piece of ply that I cut to shape on either side, and then I just used regular screws to screw into that last piece of plastic piping, and again it just sort of helps secure everything together. Okay, so now maybe you can see this whole top section is just held on by this webbing. It is completely loose, and I wanted to do that so that should I ever have a problem with the plastic on the top here, I need to replace it, I can just roll that up, take it off, and redo the roof. And of course, I said this lower section is just held in by the webbing, and this whole piece right here, it just slides right out. There's nothing else holding it in. There, look, nothing else holding it in, just tucked in. Now I put that extra board on the outside really just as a decorative measure. As you can see, the PVC sort of comes through the bottom, and I didn't think that was too attractive, so, and the two screws going through the PVC piping, it just holds it nice and steady. There is one screw holding it to that inner board and two holding it either side of that screw on the outside. And again, it just stops the PVC from sort of waving backwards and forwards. But that is basically about it. I can tell you that it cost me about $750, taxes in for the PVC and all of the wood and the screws. And luckily I had a friend who had a greenhouse, and he closed down the greenhouses, but he had a lot of plastic left over, so the plastic was free, so you can add a couple of $100 on for the plastic. And of course, as you can see, the results are impressive. We are just May the 4th and already lettuce is coming up. I have things started already. This is cabbage, kale, radish and buttercup squash, and black beans, some sunflowers and some leeks in there. In the far bed are beets, and you can just see on the grapevine the buds just starting to come out. Hoping to get some grapes off the grapevine this year. Now the end, of course, I just found some old screen windows and put those in for the fall, but again, you know, all of these can be unscrewed and taken off. And the biggest issue, trust me, the biggest issue you will find is ventilation and keeping the heat out of here, especially up in the very top section. And you can see that's why I've cut the opening at the ends there, and you will need a decent fan, oscillating fan, to keep the air moving in here, or you will burn everything. And I've known people who've done that, and the first year I had this, yes, that was an issue. Anyway, I hope that covered all the bases for you. I think I've got all the topics covered of how I built the greenhouse. It certainly wasn't difficult. It was really just, you know, measuring out things properly and getting the right dimensions so they didn't look too squat or, you know, too wide or what have you. It's not a huge greenhouse, and when you start looking around, so go online and start checking out the cost of greenhouses. And to have a 10 by 20 greenhouse like this, you're probably starting at a cheap one is $1,500 to $2,000. So I think $750 Canadian is a pretty good deal. And the other thing, you know, one of the things I'm concerned about with the upcoming weather changes, and I don't know if you've seen any of these things, these pictures online, but is this unbelievable hail. And this is what steered me away, because I did originally thought about putting glass because it's nice and clear and you get the direct sun through, but you know, if that starts getting smashed by hail, not only is it a mess in your garden, but it is expensive and a big job to replace. Whereas this plastic, it might get ripped to shreds, but I can whip this off. I can have another roof on here in a couple of days, no problem at all. So I was just trying to think down the road a little bit to different conditions that we might run into, and to think ahead. So if you've enjoyed this video, please like, comment and subscribe below. And in the meantime, this is Hamburg Steve signing off, wishing you a very pleasant afternoon, and we will talk very, very shortly. See you now. Take care. Bye.